Hey guys, welcome to another video in our Python tutorial for beginners. And today we're going to talk about if statements. Something I've been wanting to talk about since we started the tutorial. But first we had to get a little knowledge under our belt with the way some different things happen. But now we're ready to talk about them. The reason I want to talk about them so much is because they're so very important in all types of computer programming. So we're going to talk about if statements. They're also known as conditionals, right? They're based on a condition. If this condition is true, do something, right? That's very important to be able to do that. So let's just go ahead and start off and just figure out how if statements are formed in Python. So I've got PyCharm pulled up in my Programming Vault project. I'm going to try not to talk too fast. I've got a lot to cover in this video, and I'm kind of trying not to make it too long. So if there's anything that I don't cover, that you don't feel like I cover properly or I'm too fast on it, please contact me in the comments and let me know, and I'll be happy to go back through and help you with it. So first, let's just get some values down so we can start comparing things. So let's say A equals to 15 and B equals to 150. And we want to know if B is greater than A. And if it is, we want to do something. So we'll say if B is greater than A, and we'll put a colon. When you use an if statement in Python, you have to use a colon. Now for the next line, you have to indent it. You see how PyCharm automatically indents it for you? If you don't indent this line that comes under the if statement, you'll get an error in Python, because you have to indent it, because you could have much more code going down here past this if statement. You have to indent it so it knows what lines you intend to execute if this condition is true, right? Otherwise, it would just think it was another line if you started over here and that this if statement didn't matter. So just remember, you have to indent all of the outcomes for your if statements. So let's say if B is greater than A, we're going to print, what will we print? We'll print B is greater than A. Now we can make them capital, it's fine. Okay, so let's try that. What do you think that should evaluate to? B is greater than A, it's true. So if that's not true, for instance, if we put A is greater than B, what would happen? Nothing, right? You don't get anything printed out because A is not greater than B, so it did not execute this line. So if you want something to happen in the reverse case, you have to put that as well. So let's talk about that. How do you do that? So we could say if A is greater than B, print A is greater than B. But we also want to, if that's not true, we know that A is not greater than B, so we want to print that. And the way you do that in Python is with an else statement. So it's known as if else. So we can say else print A is not. All those little things that come up are really getting me. A is not greater than B. So is A greater than B? It's not. So we should see A is not greater than B. But we had to put, in our else, we had to put A is not greater than B, right? We still don't know. We still don't know if A is equal to B, right? There's no way for us to check that here. All we know in our current if statement, our current if else statement, is whether or not A is greater than B. So that's where an else if comes in, right? And the way you do an else if in Python is with the shorthand elif, ELIF. So we could say else if B is greater than A, let's print B is greater than A. And then what else? The only thing possible left is that A and B are equal. So we can just say else print A and B are equal. Didn't mean to do that. Caps lock. A and B are equal. So that covers every possibility, right? Either A's bigger, B's bigger, or they're equal. So in this condition that we're checking, what are we going to get? We're going to get that, we should get that B is greater than A, right? So let's run this and see. Yep, B is greater than A. What if we swap these values around? We'll put 150 for A, and then we'll put 15 for B. What should we get now? If all this works properly, we should get A is greater than B. And we do. What if they're equal? Let's make sure that that condition works. A and B are equal. So that what we just did and what we just learned how to do is a very powerful tool to use in computer programming and application development. You always have to check things. You always have to check whether or not things are true or false, or maybe you have to be able to check all that. You can't just leave conditions unknown, because when you do, that's when runtime errors happen, right? Errors like when you get the black screen of death on Windows, right? It's when all those things happen, is when there's unknown left in your application. And you want to try as hard as you can to keep the unknown things from happening. So we covered the if else, and the else if. Okay, I'm going to go back to A equals 15 and B equals 150. And now I'm going to cover something that I don't really use, but I feel obligated to cover it just because it exists, and I don't want to think that I didn't tell you everything I possibly could. There's a way to write these things shorthand so you don't have to make all the different lines. I think they're harder to understand, and I think you should always strive to keep all of your programs as clear as possible. They should be commented, and they should be as understandable as possible. And I just don't think these shorthand ways do that. But still, I feel obligated to show you. So if I wanted to do this shorthand, I could say if B is greater than A, and then I can put my colon, and then I can go ahead and put my print statement on the same line. Print B is greater than A. And so it's all on one line. That should work. Let's just give it a shot and make sure. It does. Again, when you're going through, if you have to go back and look through problems in the code and you've got 20,000 lines, things like that are not so easily understood, and they don't really, if I see that line, if I don't notice the word if there, it doesn't really stand out to me as an if statement. What makes it stands out to me as an if statement is the fact that you have an if statement, and then you have a condition after it, and then you've got an indented line below it, right? You get used to those patterns when you develop software a lot. There's also a shorthand for if else. I'll go ahead and show you, which I'm not a fan of, but it exists. So you could just say print A if A is greater than B, else print B. So let's run that. It printed B because A is not greater than B, so it printed B. It would have printed A if A was greater than B. Let's go ahead and make that true and go ahead and do it so we can prove it. So, yep, print A if A is greater than B, and it is, else it would have printed B. So those are the shorthand conditions for ifs and if else's. Like I said, I'm not really a fan of those, but they do exist in Python, so I figured I would go ahead and let you know about those. But there's another case that we want to talk about. There's a case for using logical operators. Remember, we spoke about those last time, ands and ors and even nots. So let's use those. You can use those for multiple expressions. So what if we have C equals 45? And we say if excuse me, B is greater than A, and notice how it lights up because it's a key word. The IDE and the interpreter will recognize that as a logical operator. So if B is greater than A and C is greater than A, give it our colon, and we'll print both conditions are true. Right? Should that be true? B is greater than A and C is also greater than A. So let's run it. Yep, both conditions are true. It evaluates both of those, and only if both of those conditions are true will it print both conditions are true. So we could do that. We could also go through here just so we know and put an else and say else print both conditions are not true. Okay, right now if we run it again, it's going to do the same thing because both the conditions are true. But if we change this and we say if B is greater than A, that's true, and C is greater than B, that's not true. All right, so both of those are not true. So it should not execute this line. It should fall down to the else and print both conditions are not true. So let's run it and just make sure. Yes, both conditions are not true because they're not both true. So that's how you use an and with the if and the conditional statements. Now we want to use an or. So if we want to put or here, we can say if B is greater than A or C is greater than B, at least one condition is true. Else we could print neither condition is true. Right? So let's go ahead and do this again where there's only one that's true. B is greater than A, that's true. If C is greater than A, well, that's true as well. So sorry, I shouldn't have changed it. Leave it with C is greater than B, because that way you know C is not greater than B. So only one condition is going to be true, but you should still get to this line because it's an or. So if this or this are true, this will print. Else, if neither of these are true, it won't execute this line and it'll fall to the else statement. So let's go ahead and try it with the or statement. And at least one condition is true. That's correct because we know B is greater than A. But if we wanted to make it so it falls here, both of these would have to be false. So let's put B is less than A. Well, I need to use the shift, I guess. So if B is less than A, which is not true, or C is greater than B, which is not true, so it should not print at least one condition is true. It should fall to the else statement and print neither condition is true. And that's what happens. Neither condition is true. So now that we know how to do that, we know how to evaluate conditions, and we know how to use logic operators on them. So now we need to learn how to do something really important as well, which is a nested if statement. That's when you have an if statement within an if statement. So I'll go ahead and show you why this is valuable. Let's say we only have one variable and we don't have any idea what its value is. Let's say A equals 25. And so we'll say if A is greater than 10, print A is above 10, comma, and then we'll also say if A is greater than 10, I'm sorry, A is greater than 20, print, and also above 20. So it's also above 20. And then we're going to, so if A is above 20, we're going to print and also above 20. Else, we're going to do something else. We're going to print but not above 20. Okay, so let's just test that out. So we've got A equals 25. If A is above 10, it's going to print A is above 10. And then nested in there, it's going to say if A is above 20, print and also above 20. Else, if A is not above 20, else it's going to print but not above 20. So let's go ahead and run that and have a look at it. A is above 10 and also above 20. That's true because we have 25. What if we have 19? Let's see what it does. A is above 10 but not above 20, which is correct. But the issue arises, what if you have 8? A equals 8 and you run it. It does nothing, right? So you probably want to put in something for that condition. So you need to go down here to where the cursor is and put in else. Now this else, my goodness, didn't mean to do that. I meant to put a colon. Now this else operates with this if. Notice how they're in line with each other. Also, the same way, this else operates with this if. So if it comes to this first condition and says A is greater than 10, and it evaluates that and it's not true, none of this is going to happen, which we just saw, right? Because 8 is not greater than 10 and it didn't do anything. So if we want to catch every case, we'll come down here and print A is less than 10, right? So let's see if that works. And it does. A is in fact less than 10, right? Because A is equal to 8. So again, I want to reiterate, if this condition is false, nothing indented under it is going to run. It's going to fall through to this else and do whatever's there. If this else is not here, it'll just continue on with your program and won't do anything, right? So that's pretty important to know, right? So that's how you nest if statements, and you can continue to nest those. So that's about every use of the if statement I can think of. So today we've covered regular if statements, how to do something when a condition's true. We covered if else statements. If something's true, do this, else do something else. We covered ifs and else ifs. So you can say if this is true, else if this is true, else if this is true, else, right? And you can do all those. We also covered the shorthand if and if else, which I'm not really a fan of, but I felt obligated to speak about them since they were included in Python. And then we covered the logic operators, right? We covered the ands and the ors. So you could evaluate multiple expressions at the same time, handle those. So that's pretty much it for the conditional statements. I really appreciate you watching this video. I'm glad you let me make it for you. I had a good time making it. If there's anything you feel like that I didn't explain properly or you need more explanation on, please leave it in the comments. I'll be happy to try to contact you and help you with it. Otherwise, if you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe so you can get notified when I make more videos. And otherwise, thank you very much.